Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Liverpool, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
It's time to find out if the title challenge is really on. This is the Arsenal Vision pre-match podcast. My name is Alex Pithick. Block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Pre-match live stream podcast, but also a live stream, but could go out as a podcast. But who knows? But you're here, or are you? Are you here? You're here. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's good to see you. I do want to just say thanks again to everybody who sent kind comments and thoughts and love and stuff. I've been going through a hard time in my life with the loss of my beautiful dog, Berkeley, who I had for 13 years, and he was my best friend, and I miss him desperately, but so many good stories and wonderful thoughts shared. And I can't thank you enough. It means the world. I hope that it will be followed by the great joy of a victory at Anfield, which is what we are really here to talk about. We have comments from Mikel Arteta. We have injury updates. We have some injury updates from Liverpool that aren't exactly what we might have hoped, but I think we all knew really what was coming. There's a lot of announcements to make, but I don't want to make them on my own. I want to include Jessica, who I'm going to bring on here in a second, and we're going to include your comments and questions. I think we'll spend the hour doing that. A tight hour preview. That's the plan today. Here with me from She Knows Arsenal, now part of the Arsenal Vision family formerly, we'll talk about that in a moment, is Jessica Black. You can find her on Twitter at It's Jessinho. Hello, Jess.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I told you before, I can't complain. Wish I was on vacation or doing something relaxing, but this is fun too. We could do this. This is fine. I'm loving it.
We are being asked to deal with every single Romain Molina allegation, to write them out and deal with them in depth. I got to level with you. I don't know entirely what the defamation laws are in all the nations in which this is being broadcast. Right. So in terms of our potential exposure and liability, my legal degree did not cover defamatory comments in multiple geographic locations. We may get to that in a moment, but just before we do, I just want to make the announcement. You are, how shall I say this, more talented at the YouTube than myself and my fellow podcasters. And as such, we've wanted to do more YouTube content for a long time. The pre-match live streams when we were in Europe were great, and hopefully we'll be back when we are in the Champions League next season. I think we just get a Champions League spot by being champions of the Premier League, so that's good. But so to make a long story longer, you are going to be my captain on the YouTube side of things. We're so thrilled about this, and I just want to say thank you because you're good at this. You know what you're talking about. You know how to handle this platform, and so you will really be our star in being able to put out more YouTube content. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm happy for the opportunity. I love this whole YouTube live streaming thing. It's my vibe, and let's be real. I look good up here. You know, I look good up here. You have your little ring light now, so that makes you look better too.
Yeah.
Like,
do you like this thing? This was hard to come by. The 424 Adidas Arsenal hoodie. I'm trying to get a little more street here, Jess. Is it working?
Not a little more street. It does give you a little bit more street.
I want some cred. That. Do I have cred? Still no cred?
Did you just buy that? You just bought that? Or you got it?
Should I have not bought it? I did buy it. I didn't steal it.
No, I mean, it looks great. It looks great. We'll work on the more street aspect and whether you actually need that or not. But the ring light, nice bright lighting, that's pretty much all you need.
Okay, good. Well, I appreciate you saying that. So I do thank you for being here. We're going to have Scott on in just a bit. I'm going to try to coax Clive onto the pod. Elliot is a full-blown boomer. I want to say I am sure I accept that I am a boomer in the common parlance, but just to be clear, I am not technically a boomer, like a baby boomer. That I'm not that old because as everyone knows, and let's get it up here because I think it is important to reemphasize. It has been stated on this podcast many times and will continue to be the case in perpetuity. I am 37. Scott knows what we're talking about there. We're going to bring Scott on in a moment. I'm going to try to coax Clive onto the show as well.
He's in the comments.
Yeah. I mean, if he's in the comments, he can be here. Going to be like, Jess' lighting is far too good. She needs to learn from the production values of the On the Whistle, ideally dark, out of focus, shot with terrible sound quality. Yep. That is how we've been doing it in the past, James. So I echo your sentiments. Jess, I'm scared to even get into this, but let's just quickly touch on and I don't even know how you just touch on this. The Romain Molina allegations. I don't. What can you even say other than they are explosive and wide ranging? I mean, it's not hard for me to believe that these sorts of things are going on in football, but it is still devastating to hear about it. And I'm curious what your reaction is to some of the things that Romain Molina alleged.
Well, yeah, last night, I was on Twitter and I saw that this space had like 40,000 people in it, 70,000 people in it. And I don't know French. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I knew that there was some crazy things being said. And lo and behold, he exposed some things that for me were obviously heartbreaking, but not really shocking. When you look at, and probably lesser covered for maybe some obvious reasons, but in the NWSL, they've been having some issues with, some allegations about women being taken advantage of by coaches and things of that nature. And so it's not something that you can really look at and say, this is shocking. It happens all across sports, not just in football. But the saddest part is that nothing is really being done and it's swept under the rug. A lot of these allegations, I'm sure, would not even be looked at. To my knowledge, Romain Molina is like a really good investigative journalist, and he knows a lot of things about a lot of people and he exposed them. And it's just sad to see that some young kids are being taken advantage of in these academies. Those are kind of the stories that have really hurt me the most. The first name that popped into my mind when some of the stuff was being said was Saliba, and hoping that nothing had happened to him, because he's still an Arsenal player and we care about him very, very deeply. And it's sad, but the beautiful game behind closed doors is not really a beautiful place. When there's money involved and people in power, there's always somebody ready to take advantage of that power. And it happens everywhere, but it needs to stop. It really does. So yeah, that's kind of thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's well said. I want to bring Scott in. I don't know the extent to which Scott is briefed on this stuff, so I'll be throwing him into the Sarlacc pit unprepared, but we're going to do it anyway. Scott's on Twitter. Don't underscore that _crab. Hello, Scott.
Yeehaw!
It's a tough thing when you got to do yeehaw.
That is, exactly. Yeah, I was just catching the beginning of that, and it's like, should I do it? It's like, it's kind of the signature, but it's not the greatest, happiest discussion, I guess, to have. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm at.
Don one just said, I live in a dark hole. Who's Romain Molina? To be fair, a dark hole is probably the right place to live for these kinds of conversations. But for anyone who's wondering, Romain Molina is sort of an investigative journalist, someone who has a lot of connections in the football world, particularly in French football, went on a Twitter Spaces, basically rant, I guess isn't the right way to put it, just an unbelievable amount of revelations about secrets that he, I guess, is privy to. And again, we have to be careful only because when allegations like this are made, there are obviously legal ramifications for them, but alleged sexual abuse of minors, illegal dealings in the transfer market was sort of the least of it. Certainly assault on certain female footballers and partners of footballers, a lot of things related to the French Football Federation specifically. It's hard for me, Scott, because I have to admit, I haven't really thought enough about what we can specifically reference and allege ourselves here, other than to say that we are covering allegations that were made and trying to responsibly respond to them. So what specifically jumps out at you in here? And is it fair to say that the saddest part about this is that none of it is so shocking in the sense that it would be unbelievable? It is the kind of thing that I think we are scarily probably prepared to believe when it comes to football. Is that fair to say?
I think it is. And somebody kind of made a joking tweet that the Get French Football Twitter account now is just kind of a soap opera. Between these allegations, the stuff that happened with the PSG women's team, bringing in, those kinds of things. It's just there's almost nothing that's happening in football right now that wouldn't be believable. And it's it's crazy. I think it's almost kind of a culture of people being able to get away with things that's really kind of deep-seated inside of this, where people kind of gotten used to the privilege of what football is able to bring to them without having to deal with a lot of consequences. And I think that's really kind of deep within the game right now, and it's scary and horrible. There's all sorts of things that similar things that have happened in other sports. So this isn't something that's exclusive to that. I think that's just something that is very just devastating to see across the world, that things happen like this. And I don't know exactly the best way to go about rooting it out besides exposing it and really making sure that there's consequences for when these things happen.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I just find it heartbreaking. And I do wonder, Jess, like, there's a lot of stuff in there that is deeply troubling, obviously, from a legal standpoint, from an ethical standpoint. It is, I think, revelatory of a permissive culture in sports generally, where athletes feel untouchable, where agents feel untouchable, and where other people are just sort of seen as pawns or property of their lifestyle. And I guess what I would ask you is, this is difficult because there are a lot of allegations that have been made against star footballers, one in particular that plays for Manchester United, for example. And what we know is that when these allegations are made, there are these stands, these sort of crazy internet stands, who will become their human shield and defend them against any accusation, no matter how legitimate or credible, which is really unfortunate. It sort of leads me to wonder, do you think there is any depth of depravity to which football can stoop, where fans might start to feel, this is too much for me, I can't engage with this sport, with this content, knowing that it is empowering people to behave in this way? Because some of the stuff that was revealed is just so horrifying in terms of sexual assault and grooming and pedophilia that it feels grotty to be associated with it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that there might be a section of people that may not be able to separate the artists from the music, if that's what you want to call it. I personally remember that when things came out about Chris Brown, R. Kelly, not to judge those things up, but there's some people that would say you have to separate the artist from the music, and I can see that there may be some people that can't do that, but I feel like the majority of people will, because let's have it right. Football is a part of our lives. Sport is a part of our lives. It helps us maybe get away from the mundane, maybe the bad parts of our life, and give us a chance to just think about something else. So to take that away, I feel like some people may be able to just put that stuff to the back of their mind because it's not happening to them. They don't want to believe it's their star footballer doing these things. There's been allegations, against big names, even somebody like Ronaldo, and it's never stopped anything, really. So for me, I think some people will maybe want to take a break from football, but it's a machine. And I think the wheels will keep turning. The allegations will go under the rug, and most people will be able to kind of put it behind them and enjoy the game for what it is. But it's disheartening, because you want to believe that they're good people, but they're just people, and they're no better than anybody else. It's just the difference is they have money and power, and they think they can get away with it. And in every industry, when there's that, it's going to happen. So because I'm thinking to myself, like, am I going to be able to separate it? I don't know. It's a big part of my life, so I don't know.
I mean, it is a fair point that Tony Rosandez made, which is, people will always watch sport no matter what. Look at the NFL. There's a lot of unfortunate stuff that happens in sport that people just seem to continue to swallow. And whether it's things associated with the upcoming World Cup, whether it's things associated with the money in football and transfer dealings, the Super League, sexual assault allegations, domestic abuse, pedophilia and grooming. I mean, you wonder, is there a bottom, Scott? I mean, I don't want to do this too long because it just broke last night. I don't think any of us really have our hands around the right way to discuss it without some of this stuff being vetted and explored by people that are a lot more, professional when it comes to investigative journalism than us. And so I don't want to speak out of turn here, but just as a final thought on this, there's always this sense that, oh, this is going to be the, Super League is going to lead to change, or the World Cup in Qatar is going to lead to a breaking point in international football, or, this allegation will lead to change. I mean, it's not just happening in football, by the way. In American football, in the NFL, there was just a horrifying story of domestic abuse from a former NFL running back that just, I think, broke yesterday. So this is always happening. I would ask you, though, do you think that this wide-ranging set of revelations could potentially lead to change, or are we so through the looking glass that change becomes an impossibility?
I mean, I think to a certain extent, it's a reflection of, society as a whole, which is, unfortunately, there are some, just evil people in the world. And I think that's, not something that you can fully root out. But I think there's also a certain extent that the power, the ability to have access to people where you're going to have, an ability to coerce people into doing things is something that draws people to these positions to be able to do that. You see that in entertainment industry, you see that in sports. There's the gymnastics scandal that hit the US with something very similar, where somebody of power was able to use their position to take advantage and do absolutely horrible, disgusting things. So I think there's a certain extent that these positions draw these people, and there has to be, when the allegations come out, they have to be taken seriously and not covered up. And I think that's the hardest thing, is to be able to do. I don't know if it can be completely stamped out, but things, when there are rumors of these things, they really need to be taken seriously. They need to be looked into, and really not be let things kind of simmer, and, people moved on without, actually bringing out what happened and why they were moved out. Because I think that was one of the things that happened in the English game, where there was the stuff in the academies where, people would be dismissed, but not really said why they're being dismissed, and they were able to move to a different club where that wasn't known, and they were able to perpetrate the acts again. So I think that's the biggest thing, is we need to be able to really just bring these things to light when they happen and own them, and make sure to do our best to stop them from happening again. It's horrible. And I don't know if there's a good way to stop it from ever happening, but try to minimize it when we can.
I do wonder if there can be people in place at clubs or in leagues who are sort of appointed and don't work for the clubs, who are sort of custodians of the public interest, so to speak. You know how like in news organizations, you have like an ombudsman or whatever in companies, and their jobs, they're sort of like an independent operator whose job it is to make sure that operation, if anyone's not familiar with this, is basically living up to their journalistic standards or the integrity or their charter or whatever the case is. Can you and must we now appoint people within clubs, within football federations, whatever it is, who are essentially agents of the public good, who are incentivized to reveal these things? Because there's so much money in football, there are strong incentives, perverse incentives, to conceal these things and protect these things. Do we need, Jess, maybe to create a position that is almost like an ombudsman, a morality ombudsman, a legal ombudsman, but someone within football organizations who is not paid by the organization, who is essentially there to be oversight for ethical, moral, and legal violations, so that there's, basically an appointed whistleblower, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, I think there needs to be somewhat of a Romain Molina, available to everybody, that is independent, that's just there to make sure that things that are happening that should not be happening are stamped out, are revealed, and people have to adhere to some sort of something. They're not adhering to anything. There's like no rules. You could just do whatever. And I do think that there should be something like that. I think Molina's unselfishness to go out there and tell people what he's found, because let's have it right. He is putting there's some really wealthy people that he's putting out there in the spotlight, and hopefully he has protection around him, because he's also said that in the next couple of months he's going to reveal more. He knows more, and he's dedicated to making sure this stuff gets out there. So there needs to be more Molinas out there. And I think not only just, it doesn't even have to be, there needs to be an organization, but it also comes from people that are seeing these things to just say something, And just personally for me, like if I could just say this really quickly is I played women's soccer at the college level, and there was protection there as well. And I'd seen things, heard things, been a part of things that I didn't feel was right. And even when I brought them forward, it came back on me. So, and I probably was like the only person who ever said anything. So I feel like if people say things that more frequently, there's independent organizations that are not a part of the people that are making these bad decisions. I think that could help, but it can also just start by people that see it, just saying something, not being afraid to say something, and see what happens. Yeah, some people are saying like an auditor. It needs to be something, but yeah, I think we're in the midst of. It seems like almost too big to stop at this point, and I know that sounds bad, but it feels that way because there's just so much money and power involved, and I'm not sure what you do. I really not.
Yeah. So I mean, let's face it, right? I think the thing that's going to make this change is if advertisers are impacted. I hate to say it, and I know that that's the cynical version, but if advertisers feel they can't be associated with this, then that's when change happens, because that's when the money's hit. Let's get to the Liverpool preview. I know that this is a difficult topic. I think it would be wrong to come on here in the wake of this and not say anything about it. It touches everything. There were allegations of Arsenal players doing, I guess, is it still called whippets anymore? Nitrous oxide? Does anybody call it that? I'm an old, as everybody knows, but I think that's sort of nitrous oxide. Was that laughing gas, basically?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they just have a lot of dental work done. Who knows? That's a possibility. But let's get to the Liverpool preview. We'll start really quickly, Scott, with your predictive model. Why don't you walk us through what this is showing? Then we'll talk a little bit lineup, and we'll take your comments and questions about the upcoming game.
Yeah, so this one, looking at it's actually a lot better than kind of what I anticipated. Arsenal playing better over the last 10 matches or so has really kind of helped us. So what we're looking at here, you can see the blue bars on top. Those are the Liverpool goals, how much they're expected to do. Arsenal there on the right in the red. The stuff in the middle are the score lines. So if you start on the left-hand side, that's Arsenal goals scored, Liverpool goals scored. So the most likely outcome is the 2-1 to Liverpool. And then at the bottom, you see the overall winning percentages and draw percentage for overall. So about 65% for Liverpool right now. So I think that's a pretty fair reflection of where things are. I think when I looked at the betting odds, it was in the same general set. I actually have it open here so I can take a look at what the betting odds said for Arsenal and Liverpool, and it is. I know I'm moving here. Yeah, about 70% for Liverpool. So not bad overall compared. So I think this will be an interesting test for Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, Jess, setting aside like model predictions, just in terms of your expectation, we talked on the pod yesterday about this game, and I sort of feel guilty because I think we settled into a discussion of it sort of like which type of loss would be the best type of loss, and didn't even really entertain the idea of like getting a result. But I think part of that is we want to recognize that there are ways that this game can feel okay without it being a result. And we want to recognize that where we are in our process, going to Anfield and not winning is okay. But is that sort of the, what do they call it? The soft prejudice of low expectations, or whatever we call it. I mean, is that being too forgiving of Arsenal to allow us to go into any game and say it's okay if we don't have the expectation of a result?
Like over the last couple of days, I've been thinking about this exact question, because as I've done several different previews, and I've come to this like acceptance that we're going to lose. It's most likely that we lose. As long as it's a respectable loss, it's fine. 1 goal margin, keep the compactness, keep it close. I'm sorry. Brentford got a result against them. Brighton got a result against them. West Ham got a result against them. And we feel like we're in and amongst those teams. So I feel like I should expect a little bit more. one of the last times that we played them, I'm not sure if it was at Anfield or at home, but we lost 3-1. Had Lacazette finished a quite easy chance, could have been a different game. And that was with like, I want to say David Luiz-ish, Rob Holding-ish back line type of vibes back there. We don't have that anymore. So although I want to go with the safe, keep it tight, it's fine if we lose, I feel like we should expect a little bit more from this team. And I'm hoping for not just competitiveness, but I want us to try to hurt them. I know that sounds like, oh, how can we do that? But I mean, if we think we're somewhere between 4th and 6th, shouldn't we feel like we should be able to hurt them at least a little bit? Teams within that section would be able to hurt Liverpool a little bit. So why would I feel differently about Arsenal? What's so different about us? I think the main difference between maybe Liverpool and us is we do struggle with teams that press. You know, we struggled against Brighton. We struggled against Crystal Palace. Those two teams press pretty well. So Liverpool is elite at that. But I still feel like we should expect a little bit more. Should we expect to kill them? No. But should we expect more than a competitive, respectable loss? Yes. And should I feel bad feeling that way? No. You know, so the more I think about it, the more I'm feeling like we're kind of letting it, we're being a little bit too, you know, passive here. We should expect a little bit more from this particular team if we think we're somewhere between 4th and 6th.
I heard this on the Arscast when he had one of the guys from the Anfield rap on. I think this is a really important point. Liverpool look really fearsome and justifiably so, especially in attack. But other than the Manchester United game, which hilariously they won 5-0, every single time they've come up against a top half team this season, actually Crystal Palace aside as well, they dropped points. They drew to Chelsea. They drew to Brentford.
I mean,
they drew
Chelsea
to City.
With the red card to Chelsea too.
Yep, red card to Chelsea. They drew to City. They drew to Brighton, and they lost to West Ham. So the idea that it's impossible for us to get any kind of result here runs a bit afoul of the fact that Liverpool have struggled to pick up 3 points against top half sides. Now, you can also look at some of those performances and say they were unlucky in some of them. I do agree with you, Jess, that pressing is a thing that is really a problem for us. Scott, one of the things I talked about a lot on the pod yesterday, and the more I think about it, I realize it is obscenely obvious and stupid, but it fits with the brand.
Your take, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Where I've been frustrated with us this season, even during our good run, are the periods of games where we have sunk deeper, defended deeper, but really given up the out ball. That Brighton game comes to mind. There was a 30-minute period, I think against Palace, that you highlighted nearby the numbers, where I think you said there were only like 5 possessions where we made more than 2 passes or 3 passes.
I think it was 3
passes. Yeah. So,
and then it was even worse once you started going even further down the chain. So I think it was like when you got to 7, which is, that's a pretty good amount. I think there was only like 1 or 2 of those, and it was, it's just can't control things.
Yeah. So I guess is the biggest fear here, because we know we're probably not going to have a ton of the possession and a ton of the territory. I think we can be a good team on the counterattack, but we have seen too often that this team, when it sits deep, sometimes gives up the out ball, the ability to expand the accordion quickly and play from back to front when we're pushed back. Why do you think that is? And what is specifically needed in your view to make sure that we don't just get pinned back in that way?
I think one of the things that I've seen, because I think we've done this a couple times, where instead of it being, because I think you can kind of look at it as almost the West Ham strategy. So they aren't a team that presses super high, but they definitely contest the midfield and don't let you go through them as easily. And I think that is something that is interesting, because I think we've done that a few times where we see it where we have our middle set. And I think that was something that we did really well against Aston Villa. I think that was the match that we had the most midfield pressures of any of our matches so far this season. And so even after we got our first couple goals, we kind of sat back a little bit. We didn't camp in their final third, but we really made it so they couldn't get into our final third. And I think that's something that'll be key, not make it easy for teams to get into our final third. When you're pinned back against a team like Liverpool, it comes incredibly hard to break against them. And I actually just pulled out their radars, and that's something that they've actually had issues with this season, is being hit on the counter. And their actual average XG per shot allowed has not been good. So they aren't a team that allows a lot of shots, But when you do get shots against them, you can break through their press. And actually, especially when they've been committing their fullbacks forward, that is something that Arsenal could take advantage of. But I think it is just going to be a matter of we need to not give up the midfield and not be passive in that zone and allow them to really get into the final third, because then, if they have, their three midfielders there and it's, 3 against 2 in the midfield with all over, we have, 6 guys, 8 back defending, that's not something that is going to give us conducive to creating counterattack situations. So I think that'll be key.
Yeah, well said. Well, let's get to some of the news that's going to impact how we set up in this game. And Jess, there is some injury news. Partey came back early from international break. It wasn't planned, so we don't know if he's fit. Aubameyang came back early from international break. Or sorry, Partey didn't go. Aubameyang came back early, and that wasn't planned, so we don't totally know what the story is there. I think in terms of not having Partey, it would be really unfortunate, obviously, but in part because I could see us going with 3 midfielders like Partey, Lokonga, and Ainsley Maitland-Niles, and sort of having that 3 shielding the 4. And then, maybe you can put Smith Rowe and Saka really wide, have Lacazette at 9 as sort of the out ball to feed it to the wide players, or even if Aubameyang's out wide. What's your thought on the injury news, and including their injury news? Because I'm not surprised at all that Sadio Mane is fit. I always expected that. But it does look like Henderson and Robertson are genuine doubts. I think them being without Robertson in particular could be very helpful because they're so dangerous on the flanks. Maybe having a little bit of relief on one of the flanks versus both of them might be helpful. Do you have a sense of how our injury news and their injury news impacts what we can expect tomorrow?
I think it impacts everything. I'm not surprised that Mane is fit. That sucks. But I think Firmino is out. And as good as Jota is, I think Firmino did a lot for that team that people don't really see. I don't see it as necessarily like a Firmino's out so great, but I do think that changes things just a little bit. Now, in regards to Robertson being out, they have a player called Tsimikas. He's the Greek player.
I'm glad you pronounced it instead of me.
Tsimikas, yeah.
Tsimikas, yeah. He's pretty much just as good as Robertson. That's not going to really help us out as much. And then there's the midfield. And we'll probably see some combination of Fabinho and Thiago. Thiago hasn't been great since he's been in the Premier League, but have it right. He's a class midfielder. And Fabinho, as long as he's there, they have the cover that they need, that they probably haven't had over the last couple of weeks, that is added to their inability to keep goals out. So I think that makes them stronger-ish. They'll be fine. Now for us, do we actually want to, if Thomas Partey is not 100% fit, do we want to risk him? Do we actually want to risk him? Let's be real. I mean, this is a game that if you had looked at our fixtures before anything ever started, we would have said probably Anfield away is going to be a loss. But do we actually want to go for it? Going for it, for me, you have to have Thomas Partey there. So there's that. Arteta has to figure out whether that's worth it or not. And then you kind of spoke about, Lacazette, Aubameyang, what's going on there. I think Lacazette has to play. We need him to sit on Thiago. We need somebody who can buy fouls. So if he's not in the game, it's a loss for me anyway. And I think our injuries are more important than theirs because I think that they're strong even with a couple of injuries. But without Thomas Partey, it feels like a lost cause. But do you want to risk him? So, I think the injury news does make a difference. But if Thomas Partey is there, I think we're going for it. And we have a decent chance of doing something, but I also expect Lacazette. And then what do you do with Aubameyang? We'll see what happens there.
There's a lot of directions you can go for this. I think one of the things we hotly debated on the podcast yesterday, Scott, and a lot of people didn't like the idea. There's a lot of calls for us to change to a back 5, to switch what we've been doing that's been working and have a specific one match plan for this game. I think there's a lot of people that don't like that. Say, look, we found something that's working. We're in the ascendancy a bit. Maybe it doesn't work at Anfield, but if you don't believe in it enough to go to Anfield and try it, then are you essentially admitting your system isn't right for big games? I cut both ways on this. It's very common for teams to have a single game plan for a specific opposition. And I think that's important to have. But I also see the point that just conceding that you can't compete with your main plan A and going to a back 5 and trying to bunker in, maybe isn't the best thing for where we're trying to get to long-term in our process. So how do you balance the idea that we should do what's been working and stick with what we do and try to impose what we do on a very good Liverpool versus maybe switching to like a back five and having a single game plan for their unique set of challenges?
I mean, to me, it's almost if this was a cup match or something like that, I could see a little bit more of a, this is a one game playoff kind of a thing. But I think I kind of lean more in the bigger picture of let's stick with a system and work through trying to deal with the issues that playing a team like Liverpool comes. Because if that's the long-term goal, and this is how we want to play long term, I think you need to be faced with these problems and try to be able to find solutions within the system that you'd like to be able to do. So I think that that's probably the way I lean. I fully understand why you might think about tailoring something specific for one team, especially if that team is good as Liverpool, that presents the problems that they have with a guy like Trent Alexander-Arnold. Because I think that you could make a certain case for, putting both Tierney and Tavares in, and you could kind of even make a case that you could still say that, maybe Tavares is the left winger instead of him being, a wing back kind of a thing. And you could still put it on paper as the same 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, whatever we've been kind of playing thing. I think you can make that case, but then, again, that's making trade-offs other places on the pitch. Is he coming in for Smith Rowe? Who are you taking out for those kinds of things? Are you taking out, maybe you take out Aubameyang and you put Smith Rowe in as the 10 and you put Lacazette as the striker. Yeah, there's a number of things that, they just present all sorts of difficult problems with their attack. And it's, do you try to minimize that at the expense of what Arsenal can do? Or do you try to maximize what your team has been doing well in this period and try to make them make compromises for what we've been doing? So it's a hard question. And I think that you could make good, strong arguments going both ways.
Yeah. And I think the question is also informed by what are you trying to do here? I mean, obviously you're trying to beat Liverpool away. You're also trying to continue to step forward in your process,
which we haven't done in the league since 2012. So
it's insane. Yeah. But I think there's value in the information you get for saying, you know what, I'm going to stick with what we've been doing and I'm going to see if that works at the absolute elite level. I think if you say to yourself, this is going to be a hard game to get a result no matter what, and you bunker in and you go to a back five and you're down 2-0 at halftime and you're just out of the game and you learn nothing from it and you say, we changed everything we did, we still lost, I don't know what that tells us. I mean, granted, you could ride it out and get a 0-0, or you could get lucky and nick a goal and win 1-0. I understand those are in the frame of, in the range of outcomes, but there is something informationally to be gained from going to Anfield with the system you've been using and saying, we are going to see if this system at the absolute most elite level within the Premier League can work. And if it does, I mean, that's a massive, not just confidence builder, but confirmation of the process. If it doesn't work, you at least have a little data point to say, okay, well, here's something we now know about that system that we kind of need to understand for going forward. I will say, Keith makes a good point. So happy that their unbeaten run is done. We don't have to worry about the Invincibles, so that's gone. Want to register another point here. Forsaken is back, says, I want a boxing match with Elliot. I'm going to tell you something, Forsaken. There would only be 2 hits in that boxing match. You hitting me and me hitting the ground, okay? That's all that would happen in that boxing match. Imagine anyone thinking that it would be worth having a boxing match with me. Let's... What is the point? The guy really wants it too. Here we go. Let's go for a boxing match. Elliot,
do you not have a freaky reach with your? I know you got a small frame, but do you not have?
I don't have anything. I can't throw a punch. I can't take a punch. I have no toughness whatsoever. I'm not streetwise. Even if I am wearing really awesome street clothing, as we discussed at the top of the show. No, this is ridiculous. There is no possibility that would be worth anything. This is more what we like. We like the love. No one needs to box. We don't need any more violence. There's enough violence in our world, for God's sakes. Ooh, good one. I'd love to see Trent against Nuno. Nuno against Trent. Jessica, this is, I think, one of the decision points for Arteta. I think maybe, just maybe, because of how well Nuno has played during a period where we've been good and played a little differently, and because Tierney wasn't so good at the start of the season in, very weird lineups to begin with and systems that were maybe a little different, that we've forgotten how good Tierney can be. But this is a decision point. And I think that they offer different things in that I think Tavares is a better transition defender, but I still maybe trust Tierney in a lower block. The one thing I'll say I've been really impressed with Tavares about he is so quick to get out and deny crossing, deny service. And sometimes I think Tierney, in an interest of not getting beat off the dribble, gives that extra yard that allows players to deliver the ball. And that's what you can't do to Alexander-Arnold. You have to be able to get in his hip pocket and stop him from delivering the ball. So, I mean, he presents a unique challenge. Do you have a sense of who is the right player to shut down that challenge? I mean, it's real hard to drop Nuno the way he's been playing.
Well, for me, it's not really about, it's more this. It's not really about Trent Alexander-Arnold. He plays more like a midfielder. So that's the midfield's problem. It's about who's going to be better against Mo Salah. And that's their most dangerous player. He's not really going to be whipping in crosses. He's going to be right at the corner of the box there, trying to beat the man and hit the ball with his left, his right. You know, he's really dangerous. And I don't necessarily feel like Tierney is I think he's a B- defender. That's what I think. I think he's somewhere around there. He's not amazing, but I do think that we haven't seen Tavares really tested. And so for me, I think I would go with Tierney just because I think that he has a little bit more experience at the highest level, playing against high-level competition like this, one-on-one with the best player in the Premier League on form right now. Does that hurt a little bit? Yes, because Nuno's been playing so well, but I think Tierney just shades it if we want to make sure that, you know, Salah is slightly taken care of. I still think he might be too much for Tierney. But if I know Arteta the way that I feel like I do, I think Tierney walks straight back into this team. I think there's certain players that, whether they're 100% fit or not, kind of walk straight back into the team. I think Tierney's that guy. I think Xhaka's that guy. And I think Saka's that guy. So I would see Tierney coming back in, especially he played very well for Scotland. And I would expect to see him in this game.
Yeah,
I think one of the interesting things
I'm just busy
actually
soaking up some love in the comments, but I agree with what you said. Scott, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I was saying one of the interesting things, I think that actually kind of the Trent Alexander question almost makes me wonder if this is a situation where Ainsley Maitland-Niles kind of makes sense in midfield. I think one of the things that I think that he did really well last game was his ability to have that natural cover in that left side of the midfield. He's got really good natural one-on-one defensive instincts. I think that, you know, Jess is definitely right. It's the fullback is going to be covering Salah. So we need almost the midfielder or winger from that side to be able to give the assistance on Alexander-Arnold. So I think that's one of the interesting questions, especially, you know, if Partey's not available. It is definitely, you know, this might be a situation where you do need Ainsley Maitland-Niles in midfield to be able to help out that, which is crazy to kind of think that we've landed here after the whole summer saga. But I think that might be a really interesting thing to be able to see and make it so it doesn't have to be. And I think this would actually be a really interesting thing to not have your winger pulled so far back, because I think that's one of the things that Liverpool is able to do to teams to make it so they're not able to counter as effectively. Is you can't station your players high up the pitch against them because they have to commit to defending back. So if you actually are able to get that from a midfielder, that would allow someone to be an outlet on that left channel in that space that he abandons when he goes forward.
Yeah, Jess?
Oh no, the only other thing I was going to say is that I think that this is just such an interesting conundrum to be in. I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles just shades this over Sambi. I just think he does, because we need to be able to engage in the physical battle in the midfield. And I just, as good as Sambi has been, he's a little lightweight. Let's be real. And I think that also calls into question somebody like Odegaard. You know, Odegaard is quite lightweight as well. I don't know.
I don't think he's got an opportunity to play in this game. I mean, to start at least. Jess, I don't see where he fits. Yeah.
I've seen some calls for him to come back in, and I'm just like, well, I don't think we're going to have a lot of possession. So we need to be able to win the ball and then break. And so if you want to be able to get Smith Rowe and Aubameyang and Lacazette and Saka on the field, and you don't play Odegaard, and I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles plus Thomas Partey works, you have to sit Sambi because he's just a little bit, I feel like I'm getting those thoughts back of him getting picked off at Crystal Palace. I feel like that could happen again. He also struggled a little bit against Brighton. So, and Ainsley has some experience in big games. So that's kind of what I'd go with. And it's just a shame.
He scored in this fixture before.
Back into this team. Yeah, he has scored in this fixture before.
I mean, we don't want to know about the scoreline of that match, but yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to worry about that. But Man City, he played. Chelsea, he played. He's kind of done this before, and I would bet that he would do a good job against Trent. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, no Odegaard or Sambi for me.
We'll get into the question of what the specific lineup is in a moment. One thing that I do want to talk about is the goalkeeping, because listening to the Arscast where they had the Anfield rap guy on, he was saying that a couple of players are having down seasons by their high standards. One was Virgil van Dijk, which I think is interesting. He's saying, look, he's still better than 85% of the center backs in the league, but not fully all the way back to his best, where Liverpool can just do whatever they want and know that Van Dijk will solve all the problems at the back. Alisson having sort of a just okay season. And obviously in Ramsdale, we have someone really special. I think Ramsdale's distribution is an interesting point in this one, Scott. And we talked about this a bit yesterday. I don't see this being a game where we can play through the thirds. I just don't trust us yet to play through the thirds under intense pressure. We haven't shown an ability to do it. Brighton really prevented us from doing it. Now, to be fair, the weather there was miserable, and we just could not control the ball and keep it.
Have we looked at a weather forecast for this weekend?
I have not. Let's see. Why not? Why not do we'll do a little weather report. How's that sound?
I mean, it's England, so it's probably going to rain.
Yeah, here we go. The weather for tomorrow. So here's what we're seeing in Liverpool, UK for Saturday. Showers expected with a high of 12 centigrade and a low of 5 degrees centigrade. Throughout the day, we'll see the high reach 12, with the likelihood of precipitation being roughly 90% and 80% humidity. Could be a windy one, with wind reaching 26 kilometers per hour. Now over to you with sports, Scott. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think in terms of press, the way to play through the press, ideally, if you're, like Manchester City, is ping it around one touch, all of your incredibly technical players moving it through the pitch to the point where the other team has to stop pressing you. We're not there yet. Fair enough. But I do think that Ramsdale being able to make some of those intermediate type passes, Leno always went short, 3 yards to the center back, good luck, Godspeed, or to Xhaka, who could get robbed of it, and so on and so forth. Or he kicked it long and it was coming right back at us. When Ramsdale has kicked it long, it has come right back at us. But we've seen him able to break lines, those sidewinders, those different varieties of passes that can maybe pick out a target just behind that first wave of pressure. So is Ramsdale's distribution potentially an outlet from the press that ideally could give us a little bit of a variety in how we try to get back to front, Scott?
Yeah, and I think that's something that, they saw the value in Ramsdale to be able to do those things. Because, yeah, I think that is a good point. His long passing has just been okay. I mean, a part of that, I think, is that we don't necessarily have the outlet for those kinds of passes to make them stick. I mean, yeah, when you're doing it out to Aubameyang or Saka or even Smith Rowe, those aren't guys that are going to win a lot of aerial duels and, keep the ball a lot. But one of the things that has been incredibly impressive is he's done it so many times where he kind of disguises that pass where it looks like he's going to go out to a fullback and then he comes across and will find a guy through the middle. And I think that's something that has been very impressive because I think he's done it a good handful of times. And I think that how much we play from the back, I think depends on who's available in midfield. If we do have Partey available, I think that gives us a lot more of that technical security to be able to do it. And at least I would feel a lot more comfortable if he was on the ball, being able to do those things. And I look at a lot of our players that we actually do have. I feel pretty comfortable when Tomiyasti's on the ball. I feel good when Gabriel and White are there. So I wouldn't be I don't want us to go long every single time because I think that is just a recipe for the ball to be right back at you within a number of seconds. But I think we need to kind of find a happy medium to be able to find space in behind, but not be so, I guess, regimented about always going short and playing through. So, yeah, I think Ramsdale's intermediate passing is going to be very important. I think the other one, like I keep harping on, is to not have all 8 players inside the defensive third and to actually have players out there to be able to act as an outlet to where we can actually get the ball out and have it stick out there instead of it being, a 3 against 2 or a 4 against 2 kind of a situation at the back for those long passes. So I think that'll be key.
Yeah. I should point out the image on your screen right now of Ramsdale flying through the air, making that famous. Why would it be infamous? Famous and celebrated free kick save. This was done by Brandon McKenna, resident Arsenal Vision artist. And will be part of a new series we're going to do for our merch also, which is the Player of the Month and Iconic Moments series. So we're going to try to put some stuff out there that celebrates Players of the Month and iconic moments. This was all hand done by Brandon using whatever tools artists use and whatever software artists use, neither of which I'm familiar with or even can speak to. But you'll be seeing this more. But I want to give Brandon credit because that is hand drawn, exquisitely done. And just beautiful work by him.
Yeah, he tweeted out a thing where he shows the different layers that he went through and kind of a little bit of how he went through doing it. And just, it's really cool for him to show that kind of behind the scenes thing. Absolutely really cool. And I'm jealous of the ability to do those kind of things.
It's crazy when you see people who have a talent that like you can't like even footballers, right? Like I can understand how to kick a football well. I can't do it, but I could like go out on outside and like start trying to kick a football and try to get back. I couldn't even begin to like pick up an Apple Pencil and try to like draw. I couldn't even draw like a stick figure. So you know the one of the horse where the front of the horse is perfect and then the back of the horse is terrible. I could only do the back of the horse. I couldn't do the front of the horse. Anyway, let's get to lineup predictions. I think that's kind of fun. And as we start to turn the corner to finishing here, we can predict this a little bit. Jess, I'll start with you. I realize that there's some injury issues that remain to be worked out, but give me your sense, not of what you would do, but what you think he will do.
I think Arteta is going to stick with the 4-2-3-1. He didn't change it for Chelsea. He didn't change it for Man City, so I don't expect him to do it now. I would imagine we'd see the group that we're used to seeing, plus Tierney. I think Tierney, just like Granit, walks straight back into this team. No offense to Nuno, but that's just what I think Arteta would do. I think he's going to go with Thomas and Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Actually, no, I'll take that back. I think he's going to go with Thomas and Sambi. For some reason, I would prefer Ainsley, but I think he'll go with Sambi because that's what he's been doing. The only reason why Ainsley played against Watford was because Thomas was not available. And he's really impressed with Sambi. And then I think because Aubameyang is fit and he wasn't necessarily brought back because of any sort of, conversation, he was. But Aubameyang, Lacazette, nice and rested. Hopefully can go for the full 60. Let's see what he can do. Bukayo and Emile Smith-Rowe. That's what I think will happen.
All right. So it's funny. Well, I'll give you mine at the end because it's the least important. Scott, what do you think we're going to do?
So I was kind of thinking through that same thing, and I've got roughly the same lineup there, but I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles actually does come in. I think that he will look at what he was able to kind of do to give the cover on the left-hand side. I think that'll be very important. I think Partey definitely comes in. I really hope that it was a precautionary kind of thing. I think that's something that Dr. Raj just kind of talked a little bit about, that it's not super serious. And I was very happy to see him not go on international duty and just have a little bit of the rest. And I think he should be ready to come right back into the lineup. So yeah, I think that we'll definitely see basically the same lineup. It's just going to be Partey coming in for Sambi. And Tierney coming in for Nuno. I think, Tierney comes back in for this one.
Okay. So, quick question. Can't work out what kind of hat Scott has on.
It's a beer hat. So that's from here. It's a Cali Craft. It's a brewery that I used to live next to.
That you used to live inside
but you like beer.
I do like beer.
Beer drinker. If you follow Scott on Twitter, you will occasionally get updates pushed to his timeline from his, what is it, Untapped app?
Yeah. I do drink quite a bit of beer. That's where you'll find me on weekends.
No, yeah. I mean, there's as evidence. I mean, to be fair, I just skip the beer and go straight to the bourbon. Might be a little early for that tomorrow, but also might be needed. Let me give you my lineup. I think we're going to get the full bunkered down experience. I think it's a back five, Tomiyasu on the right. I think it'll be White, Gabriel, Tierney, Tavares as left wing back. So that's our five across the back. I think there will be three in midfield, and the three will be Partey, Sambi, and Maitland-Niles, with Maitland-Niles dropping into that left sort of defensive half space to help Tavares and Tierney deal with the Alexander-Arnold and Salah threat. And to be fair, I do think Maitland-Niles is an extraordinarily effective tool for that specific kind of role. And we saw him do it really well in our cup run against City and Chelsea. So I think he can do that again. This guy, it's funny. I do a podcast with a lot of intelligent people, and sometimes I see an opinion so bad that I'm like, that is a person I never want to have a football conversation with. And I think this guy, Clive Palmer right here, I think we just cross him right off the list. Whiskers FC for the win. You're damn right. So look, back five, middle three, and then I think two up front. And I think the two up front will potentially be Lacazette and Saka, or Lacazette and Oba if he's fit. I think Smith Rowe could get dropped here. I don't think Odegaard will play. I don't think Pepe will play. But I think, look, there's a possibility that I am overthinking the defensive side of this game. It is interesting. Arteta's comments going into this game were good, I thought. He recognized that, we're on a good run, but this is one of the hardest places to play. Clive makes a good point. Where are your exits? This is simple. You sit deep, you put everyone within 18 yards of your goal, and you never leave your own defensive third. What could go wrong? No, your exit's simple. You boot it long to Lacazette, who turns and spins it out to Oba or Saka, and they run in behind and chip Allison 3 or 4 times, and you're good to go. All right, so maybe that's too defensive. Let me give you another lineup. They're calling this the lineup of fear.
Yeah.
I mean, I already told you what would happen if I got in a boxing match. I would just curl up in the fetal position and say, please stop hitting me. So, all right, let me, oh God, sort him out. Would you sort him out? Would you? That's how Clive sounds. Exact voice before I engineer it. Okay. How about this? Back four, Tomiyasu, White, Gabriel, Tierney. I just don't see him going with a double pivot that includes Sambi Lakanga. So Partey and Maitland-Niles. I don't see him picking Sambi in this game. He needs someone to drop into that left half space and help with the Salah, Alexander-Arnold side of the pitch. So I think Maitland-Niles and Partey, if he goes for that. Smith Rowe, Lacazette, Saka, and Oba. I mean, that's what it would be then, with the only switch from what we've done being Maitland-Niles for Lakanga. I don't know, Jess. Is that more realistic? Same thing, just bring in Maitland-Niles to do that sort of defensive specialist role when we try to shut down the left side?
It's the midfield. And then whether or not Arteta sticks with Nuno, I think there's still a small question of that. I just personally feel like Tierney comes back in, but I think if you do play Nuno, you better play Ainsley. So I think there's a good shout for Ainsley to come in, but I have this weird feeling that Sambi will still play. I think he really likes Sambi. I just think he really likes
great.
him. I don't know.
I just think he's great for, it's kind of like Odegaard is also great. He's a connective player. He's a player who's good for ball progression. Are we going to have a lot of opportunities to play through the third? If not, give me, and here's the other thing, right? Sambi's a little bit elusive, but I think players who can carry the ball under pressure, carry the ball forward in this game might be a little more helpful than players who, receive it on the half turn and can get, I mean, we've been hurt. What was the game where Sambi lost the ball? And they scored
the Crystal Palace.
The Palace game. I know it happened to Partey as well, so it can happen to anyone. I think Smith Rowe's ball carrying can be important. I think Maitland-Niles' ball carrying. I don't know, Scott. What about that? What if we just go same way we've been going? Tierney comes in for Tavares and Maitland-Niles comes in for Lakanga, so you have just a little more solidity on the left-hand side.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much what I predicted. And I think one of the things when you're thinking about Sambi is that I don't think he's a bad defender, but I think one of the things that you've been able to see kind of in this season so far is that he can lose a little bit of the positioning of things, be a little bit ball watching, and that's pretty natural. But he doesn't have the elite athleticism to cover for that sometimes. So I think that's something that, especially against Liverpool, because their movement is so good, the way that they will set up, because they're definitely a position-based team as well. So it is something that it's incredibly key to make sure that you are cutting out those zones. And I think that's important. I think if Partey's available, you already have a lot of what you're looking from Sambi to be able to do. So I think that second person that's going to partner, if it's Partey, I think that you do need someone who can give you extra strength, extra cover on that left side to be able to do those kinds of things. So I think it is right, especially in a match where we're not expecting to have a ton of the ball. I don't think you need the two ball progressors in midfield. I think you need the main guy. So if Party's not available, I think you have to go with Sam, because I think we do need to have somebody who can be the outlet in between, the thirds. But if Party's available, he does that better at this time. I think there's not a real argument for that. And I think you need that second guy to be able to give extra solidity to cover the defense.
Yep. The only thing I will say about that is, like, the only reason why Ainsley played was because Thomas wasn't there. I don't think that I don't think he's there if Thomas can't play, but I don't see Arteta going with them two together. I have this weird feeling that for his balance in his mind is Sambi and Thomas. Like, even though I'd prefer Ainsley, that's just, we'll see.
Look, I mean, it is the case. What I thought was interesting in Arteta's comments, if you read, he's asked, basically like, how do you stop Liverpool? How do you solve them? And he did make the point that every game we look at what the team's strengths are and what their weaknesses are and how we can restrict their strengths but exploit their weaknesses. I think what makes Liverpool a really difficult proposition is their strengths are very clear and very threatening, and their weaknesses are a lot less clear and a lot less easy to exploit. Like, you could have the perfect game plan and still not go beat Liverpool at Anfield. Like, it's just that simple. They beat Manchester United 5-0. Right now, you can laugh at United, but that's a talented United team. The thing I will point out about Liverpool, if you look at them, their attack is the most elite attack in the Premier League this season, both in my mind, just looking at them, but also statistically. Their defense is more in the cluster of good but not great teams in the league. And so my hope from this game more than anything is, let's have our moments where we have a go. Let's find a way, whether it's in the space vacated by Alexander-Arnold or going at the right-hand side without Robertson, maybe seeing if Van Dijk, can maybe be beaten, in a race, with an Aubameyang this time, not fully back. Like, find what you think their weakness is and exploit it. The one thing that would be really sad as I started with this episode was just to say, like, I don't want to come away from this where it's like 2-0, but we never feel like we had our moment. Let's find our moment. Let's do a quick prediction before we get out of here. Scott, what do you predict outcome for the game?
I think 2-2. I feel pretty good about that. I think there's goals for both teams here. I feel pretty good. I'm not predicting that we're going to have our first win since 2012, but I think there's a good chance that we can get a result and keep the unbeaten streak running. I think that we can do 2-2.
Jess?
You stole my thunder. I'm feeling 2-2. I think we score off of a set piece again. Like, we do something like that. And even maybe a Lacazette goal. That's what I'm feeling, He's
got to take shots, though, man. He's got to get some more shots in him.
But he loves a goal in a big game. Like, and I just have this weird feeling that he's going to do it this time. He's rested. He hasn't done anything in the last 2 weeks. He should be able to go. So
he's definitely going to get 60 minutes out of him, right?
Definitely 60 minutes. Definitely 60 minutes. I've been loving Lacazette's energy lately. 2-2.
I just want to be clear before I make my prediction, because I don't want to be the enemy of the people. That yesterday on the podcast, Paul, who is sometimes criticized for being obscenely positive, almost offensively positive, predicted 4-0 to Liverpool. Okay. That was his outro, his 4-0 to Liverpool. So I just want to be clear that he predicted that. So the one thing that I think is pretty clear is we're not keeping a clean sheet. And I don't mean because we're bad defensively. Almost no one does that to Liverpool. Their attack is absolutely elite, and they don't need a full chance. Like, right? I mean, the sad thing with Liverpool is you can play really well, defend really well, and Salah can burn you with a wonder strike. Jota is frustratingly difficult to track in the box. Obviously, like Sadio Mane is difficult. I think they have a real weakness on set pieces that can be exploited sort of unexpectedly. We saw that with West Ham, and our corners have been getting better. It would be awesome if we could find a way to get a couple of corners in this game and see if we could get something from that. I think it will be a good game, a game we are in, a game where we score, but I just think their attack will have too much for us, and that in the end, we'll have a little bit of hope, maybe take the lead, 1-0 Arsenal, but wind up falling 3-1. I think 3-1 feels like the scoreline to me, but one where we come away and say,
which is, we've had 3-1 the last 2 times as well.
Yeah, but I see a 3-1, Scott, where I'm like,
that wasn't bad.
That was a good game, and we just couldn't quite make the 90 minutes with them. And I think that's also, the next thing for this team generally, right? We have a lot of players right now that are sort of 60-minute players. And, I think there's a question of what we need to do to get to be 90-minute players. I think we'll leave it there. Really appreciate everyone joining. We love you for being here. And I just want to do more of this. We're so happy to have Jess taking over control of the YouTube side of things so that we can do more. Scott's on Twitter, _that_crab. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks for roping me in.
All right. Jess, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and be more a part of this. And I love listening to you talk football. I love what you do on YouTube, and I'm just proud that we're going to be able to do more stuff with you. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, just on Twitter, it's Jessinho. You bet. My name is Elliot Smith. Thank you for joining us. We certainly love you for being here. We'll have instant reaction for patrons tomorrow, an hour after full time, as always. And then there'll be more live streams coming, thanks to Jess. There'll be podcasts coming. And we're going to be doing for our instant reactions your reactions. So we're going to include your audio recordings into our voicemail, into the instant reaction pod. So I think that'll be fun. Thanks for everyone who fed back. Thanks for all the comments. We love you for being here. Wherever you are, I hope you're doing well. And I hope we have a great day tomorrow. Up the Arsenal. We love you. We will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Liverpool 0.